guys, it is Delancey. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my recent reads as we wrap up the summer season and head into the fall, the best season of all. So, wow, I did not intend for that to rhyme. But anyways, let's go. Okay, so the first genre we are going to tackle on this list is going to be fantasy. So the first book I want to chat about is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This is a standalone adult fantasy novel with a lot of dark humor as well as some thriller elements to it, I would say. We are following a character named Peyote Trip, and he works in hell, quite literally. And in this book, hell just so happens to be structured like corporate America. Now, Peyote has worked his way up the corporate ladder, and he has landed a pretty sweet gig working in the deals department. And the story opens with Peyote trying to get a promotion, and the way for him to get this promotion is if he can hit some sort of deal combo. So he has sold the soul of so many members within the same family, the Harrison family, and he just needs one more soul. And if he can make that deal, he gets the promotion. And then shortly after the opening of the book, he also gets a sidekick named Calamity. She is a new hire who is very timid and very shy, and they have a very comedic, fun relationship and dynamic throughout this book. This book is multi-POV, so we are reading from the perspective of Peyote as well as various members of the Harrison family. And throughout this book, you are trying to figure out which member of the Harrison family is Peyote going to give his deal to. And as the story unfolds, each of the family members are having all of these dark secrets bubble up to the surface, and as the reader, you're trying to figure out whose mess is big enough that they would be willing to sell their soul to Peyote. And I really enjoyed this book. This book surprised me. It is a debut novel, so I was pleasantly surprised. I would give this probably 4 stars just because the ending, while it does have some really great twists and surprises at the end, I feel like if we had gotten more screen time with Peyote, who was definitely my favorite character in this book, I feel like that ending could have been even more impactful. Solid, great debut novel, and perfect for the fall season around Halloween. Next up on the list, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I am really late to the game on this book, but ever since I rejoined the online book community, I've been really trying to make an effort wherever I can to read some of the booktube classics that were going around while I was absent, and this book has been on my list for a really long time, so finally got to pick it up. It is the story of a French girl in the 1700s who, on the night of her wedding, she ditches the altar, runs into the woods, and she makes a deal with the gods who answer after dark, which is something you should never do. She makes a deal to live forever, be forever free, free from death, free from responsibility, free from choices. She can go wherever she pleases, but the catch is that she is also free from everyone's memories. So no one remembers her forever and for always. Until about 300 years later in New York City, this girl, Addie LaRue, is shopping at a bookstore, and some random boy happens to remember her name. And the story unfolds from there as Addie starts to learn that there may in fact be a loophole to this curse that she is living. This is a story of perseverance. This is a story of the human desire to leave an impact or leave a mark on the world. It's also an exploration of how we go about leaving our marks on the world. What does it mean to have a meaningful and impactful life? There is a lot of food for thought in this book. The writing is also stunning and just beautiful, very lyrical. There's so many lines in this book that you could tattoo onto your body. Let's just put it that way. The only thing is that I feel like I was just not quite the right person, or not quite in the right time of my life to feel the full impact of this book that I feel like it had on other people. It's a lot of character exploration, a lot of character development. I've heard the term navel gazing before. There's a lot of navel gazing, I would say, in this book. A lot of content and concepts to think about, but I did find myself wishing for a little bit more of a plot in this book. At times it did feel like it was dragging for me. The dynamic between Addie, the main character, and the creature that she makes the deal with, I love that dynamic. I thought that their interactions were so interesting, and I wish we saw more of that throughout this book. But nevertheless, I can finally say I've read it. I finally read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I can rest in peace. So, well done. Next up on the list is another booktube classic, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in a very famous adult fantasy series. I don't really know if I should give the synopsis since so many people have read it at this point, but just in case, if you don't know the synopsis, the first book opens on a human girl named Feyre. She belongs to a very poor family, and in order to feed her family, Feyre goes out into the woods and shoots and kills a wolf. Turns out the wolf was actually a member of the Fae, and a few days later a Fae prince arrives on Feyre's doorstep to let her know that she has committed murder and she must now pay for her crimes. So he kidnaps her and she must now forever live with him in the Fae lands as a punishment. So the book starts off very much like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it does really evolve and change from there. Eventually Feyre starts to learn more about her captor as well as the plague that is affecting the Fae lands, and will ultimately become a threat to the human lands where her family lives, and Feyre eventually has no choice but to enter the fight as she tries to save her family as well as her lover, which happens to be the Fae prince, which I don't feel like is a spoiler because since this is a romantasy, it's just kind of a given. For me, this book was fun. It was okay. It was like a 3-star fun, good time read. I don't know how motivated I would be to immediately pick up the second or third book in the series after reading this first one, but it would continue to remain on my radar. I was reading this book while I was flying on an airplane, and one of the flight attendants stopped me, let me know she had read the entire series, loved it, and she told me that I just need to get through the first book, and it's on the second book that things start to really pick up and get exciting. And I'm glad she told me that because like I said, I would agree. I wouldn't be that motivated to pick up the second book, but hearing that from her, that it does get better, now motivates me to check out the second book in the near future. So it was good. It was entertaining. I didn't knock my socks off, which was a little disappointing for me. And the thing is, I do like Feyre as a female protagonist. Who I don't like, and what I think is a big part of the problem here, is that I just really wasn't a fan of the male protagonist, the male love interest, the Fae prince. And so that immediately is going to be an issue in any romantasy novel, because when you don't like the male protagonist, it is very difficult to care about what happens to him or what happens to their relationship. So I think that really contributed to me being kind of lukewarm on this first book, but nevertheless, I am interested in seeing how it continues to evolve, and I'll be picking up the second book here soon. So moving on to 2 books that I'm very excited to talk about. Book 1 and Book 2 in the Empire of the Wolf series, The Justice of Kings and the Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. These books contain the story of Sir Conrad von Valt, who is a famous Justice of Kings, and he upholds the laws of the land with his sharp mind, arcane powers, and skilled swordsmanship. Now, the books are told in the past tense from the perspective of his previous clerk and protege, Helena Sedenka. And so she narrates the books now as an old woman, reflecting back on her time with Sir Conrad. And right off the bat, I have to say I love this choice that the author made because it makes for a really interesting perspective and also for a really fun narrator. And so the book opens with Sir Conrad von Valt and Helena as they investigate the murder of a noblewoman. And eventually this spirals out of control and leads to a conspiracy that goes all the way up into imperial society. And so throughout both books 1 and 2, we are watching through the eyes of Helena as her mentor struggles to uphold the law and be a just man while also protecting his empire. And a lot of the time, these 2 objectives do not complement one another. Both books, 5 stars, no hesitation, loved them. Absolutely loved them. They might actually be my 2 favorite reads of 2023. Now, I still have the fall season and the winter season to get through as well, but these are pretty high up there. First things first, Helena Sedenka is definitely one of my favorite fantasy female protagonists of all time. She is tough, she is fierce, but she also feels so realistic. She feels like a true woman who has emotions, yet at the same time is trying to survive among all of these men in this cutthroat world. She feels so real to me and so relatable, and she makes for a great narrator for these stories. And so that right off the bat, number one, is why I love these books. The world building, the political intrigue, the intricate relationships between these justices, these lords, these religious figures, these noblemen. It was so detailed and complex. Your brain is gonna hurt, at least if you're listening to the audiobook. But it was so much fun. It was just so detailed and in depth. It felt, like I said, so real. The world building is just on point in this book for me. And I've heard other reviewers in places like Goodreads refer to this series as a sophisticated take on fantasy, which I would completely agree with. I think that perfectly describes the series. Okay, and then thirdly, the second book, the stakes just continue to get higher. And the second book really takes a dark turn. I mean, like a really dark turn. And there were even points throughout the second book where I was getting a little spooked out. And there are certain truths and qualities of this fantasy world that are so unsettling as the reader, and it just makes for such a page turner, and you really feel for these characters, and you hope for the best. But I don't entirely know if Richard Swan is going to deliver us a happy ending or not. The third book, I think, is the final installment of this series, and I'm hoping for a happy ending, but I can't confidently say that, and that is so exciting as a reader. And then just going back to the characters too, all of the characters are so likable in their own morally gray ways. I think it's so impressive that Richard Swan has taken a collection of burly, bearded swordsmen, and he has given all of them such unique personalities that they all stand out in their own beautiful ways, and to watch these personalities also clash with one another as they form friendships as well as rivalries with one another. It's just so well done. So loved these two books. These were great, and I cannot wait for the third book. I think it's coming out next year. Definitely one of my most highly anticipated reads of 2024. Next up, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the first book in an adult romantasy series. I think it's going to be a 6-book series, if I remember correctly. One of the most popular books in the online book community this summer, hands down. Everybody is talking about this book. Everybody has read this book. So many people are buying this book that you could not buy it, the physical copy, in bookstores. How I even managed to find a physical copy of this in an independent bookstore in town, I don't even know. But I picked up Fourth Wing just because I was hearing so much hype about it. And my experience was not what I expected it to be. I actually did a full reading vlog on this book, so I will go ahead and share that up above if you want to check it out. I read this along with some other hyped books in the online community, and I've had some time since that vlog to really sit and ponder about my feelings of Fourth Wing, and my thoughts have changed a little bit, not a lot, but just as a quick synopsis, we are following a girl named Violet. She is living in an empire that is currently at war, and originally Violet had planned to join her military's scribe quadrant to live a quiet, quaint life among the book stacks. But because Violet's mom is a famous general in the military, she is pressured to instead join the Dragon Rider quadrant. But in order to do that, she must first attend Dragon Rider school, which is a very competitive and cutthroat setting because there are more interested Dragon Riders than there are dragons. On top of that, the school itself condones violence. It allows students to kill off one another because why not? Toughen them up a little bit. And Violet is inserted into this very aggressive environment, one she has not trained whatsoever for. And she has a lot of enemies, including a boy named Xaden. And there is a lot of family tension between the two of them. He has every reason in the world to hate her and want to eliminate her while they are attending this school together. But this is a romantasy. So I think the intention, is to have this sort of enemies to lovers trope going on. But I really wouldn't say this book has that. It's more so light, suspicious rivals to lovers, more so to lust to lovers. I don't know. I think that trope and that element was one of the sore spots that I had with this book. 3 stars if I had just picked it up on a whim. Given all of the hype and all of the excitement around the book, I was motivated right when I finished it to give it 2 stars because for me, it didn't deliver really what I was looking for. Going back to the romance part of it, I felt like the romance in this book was so rushed. If we are going to be getting 6 books in this series, I feel like we should have a really great slow burn romance, not something that is so, it just felt so quick for me as a reader. What will be the journey that their romance takes in the next 6 books? I am really curious to see. Another sore spot for me with Fourth Wing was the world building, and I think that's because first and foremost, I'm a fantasy reader, not necessarily a romance reader, and while there are romance books that I like, and there are certainly romantasy books that I like, I am very picky, and I'm kind of a hard sell. And for me, the romance does not pop off of the page unless the world building is so well put together and lush, and if there are also really great platonic relationships in the book. There needs to be all the other ingredients for that romance to really work for me. And in Fourth Wing, I wasn't getting the world building that I really needed as a reader to really buy into the romance and really enjoy the romance, or even feel that high stakes feeling throughout the book when characters are being killed off because we're in this very aggressive, cutthroat setting. But I didn't know enough about the world or the inner workings of it or the magic system. Just a lack of complexity in the relationships between the characters that I just didn't really care if anyone got killed off because I just wasn't invested enough. Now, in the last part of this book, probably the last 25%, maybe the last 10% of this book, I really saw the potential there for world building and for greater complexity in the relationships, and that sold me. That was enough to tell me, okay, maybe I should give the second and the third book and the future books in this series a try. So I have mixed feelings about Fourth Wing. Second book comes out in November. Looking forward to it, and we'll see. So now we're going to be moving into some literary fiction, and first up on the list is going to be Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. We are following the lives of 2 characters, Sadie and Sam, who meet at a very young age in a hospital. Sam is in there because he got into a car accident and badly injured his foot. And Sadie is there because her sister is sick in the hospital. And the 2 of them meet in the arcade room of the hospital, and they hit it off, have a quick friendship, and we eventually learn that Sam had been completely mute since his accident. He talked to no one. And Sadie was the first person that he finally said words to, and it was over a video game that they were playing. And from there, they continue to be friends, and gaming continues to be the glue that keeps their friendship together. They eventually drift apart throughout their teen years, and they reconnect while they are in college, and the 2 of them, both being geniuses in their own rights, decide to create a video game together over the summer. And from there, that video game takes off, they become worldwide sensations, they become famous, and you follow their relationship from there. You follow them as business partners, as friends, as near lovers, never right place, right time. It is a very realistic take on contemporary romance, especially lifelong childhood friends. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite book of the year or anything like that, but I can definitely see why it won awards. A solid piece. If you like literary fiction, I would highly recommend it. The second piece of literary fiction that I read recently was If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I liked this one more than Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, just because I found the characters to be a little more interesting and the themes that were explored were just more interesting to me. So the few characters that we're following include a girl who works at an exclusive bar where she entertains businessmen, another girl who is an artist that is in a questionable relationship with a boy from a rich family, a hair salon stylist who is mute and is a K-pop fan to the upteenth degree, her friend who is undergoing a lot of plastic surgery in order to eventually work in that exclusive bar and entertain businessmen, another woman who is a pregnant newlywed who is dealing with some marriage troubles as well as financial struggles in Korea's tough economy. You get to explore contemporary life in South Korea, which is of course interesting, but you also get to explore the social hierarchies that they have, the impossibly high beauty standards they have for women, as well as K-pop mania, which is also so fascinating to me. I am learning Korean, so that all ties into my experience of this book and why I enjoyed it so much. It's humorous at times, heartbreaking at other times. And it's interesting how regardless of what city, what culture, what country you live in, the human experience, the female human experience, is quite similar across the board. So now we're going to move into our mystery category. First up on the list is Coldplay by Junia Black. This is the second book in the Shady Hollow series. The Shady Hollow books are interesting. They are quaint mystery novels centered around woodland critters. So think Wind in the Willows, Frog and Toad, Winnie the Pooh meets CSI, but way less aggressive, very quaint, wholesome, low stakes. So every story centers around our main female protagonist, Vera Vixen, who is a Fox reporter who just moved from the big city into the quaint town of Shady Hollow. And what Vera is finding is that there's a lot of shady stuff going on at Shady Hollow. Second book opens up on a rabbit finding moose bones out in an apple orchard, and from there the town is in a frenzy as they immediately think the one moose that lives in town is responsible for the death of this other moose. And these books are not particularly memorable, but they are a great time. They're really great for casual listening. If you have read something like The Tyranny of Faith and your brain has been on X Games mode and you need to move on to another book, but you want to take it slow, I would highly recommend picking up something like the Shady Hollow series. Low commitment, low stakes, but definitely a good time. It will keep you entertained. Also, there's a very cute romance in this book, and that romance carries throughout every installment in the series. I don't know why the romance between two animals is so exciting for me, but And finally, we have The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This was a book I picked up on a whim. I don't typically read mystery thriller novels, but this was something that I saw on Book of the Month back in January. It piqued my interest. I picked it up, finally read it. This is the story of a marriage counselor who has very unconventional techniques. She is famous for these unconventional techniques, and these techniques include her getting way too close to her clients, basically inserting herself into their personal lives and also spying on them as she tries to figure out what secrets husbands and wives are keeping from one another. Now, the thing is, this marriage counselor has some secrets of her own, and throughout the story, while she is trying to get dirt on her clients, she is also running from the consequences of her choices made with previous clients, which is probably my favorite element in this book. I was way more interested in the marriage counselor than I was in the Golden Couple, which is the husband and wife duo that she is focused on throughout this novel. The Golden Couple, this husband and wife, they look perfect on the outside, golden on the outside, but of course there is a lot of cray-cray stuff going on the inside. Cheating on spouses. They also have a son together, which just continues to add fuel to the fire. So this book is on the shorter side, so another great readathon selection, and yet it still successfully had me guessing. I really was not sure what the ending was going to look like, so props to this book for that. The one thing I have to comment though on this book is the choice in POVs. So the book is multi-POV. We are following the perspective of the marriage counselor as well as the perspective of the wife. The choice to do that ended up revealing a lot more to the reader than I think the authors intended. So if you are going to do multi-POV, I would probably do POVs of a bunch of different characters, because that would really have kept me guessing even more as a reader, or only stick from the POV of the marriage counselor. I just feel like for me, I was still surprised by the ending, but it really would have rocked my socks if we had a little bit of a different POV dynamic going on. So the choice to not include the husband's POV, it just, you know what I'm saying? So a little bit of issue with the POV. Nevertheless, very entertaining, quick read. If you do like domestic thrillers, I think this is worth picking up, and a good selection from Book of the Month. If you are interested in seeing some other books I read over the summer, I'm gonna go ahead and link some of my reading vlogs up above and down below for you to watch next. Otherwise, that is gonna do it for this video. You guys, I am so pumped for the fall season. My fall TBR video is coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys!